What happens after the last breath? Does consciousness simply fade into nothingness, like a candle being snuffed out? Or does it embark on a profound journey through realms beyond our ordinary understanding? For centuries, the mystics and spiritual masters of Tibet have explored these fundamental questions of existence. They've left us an extraordinary map for the territory beyond death, the Bardo, known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This isn't just another religious text. It's a precise set of instructions for the greatest journey we'll ever undertake, the passage through death and what lies beyond. Today we'll step through this portal together, exploring what this profound wisdom tradition tells us about the nature of consciousness, reality, and the great mystery that awaits us all. In our modern world, death is often treated as a taboo subject, something to be feared and avoided in conversation. But what if death isn't the end we fear, but rather a gateway to extraordinary possibilities? What if, instead of representing darkness and finality, death offers us our greatest opportunity for spiritual awakening? The Bardo teaches us that death is not a moment, but a process, a series of transitional states, or bardos, that the consciousness navigates after leaving the physical body. These states present both profound challenges and unprecedented opportunities for liberation from the cycle of birth and death. But this wisdom isn't meant only for the dying. The Bardo contains essential teachings for the living, showing us how to prepare for this inevitable journey while we still have the chance. As the text reminds us, the way we live directly influences how we die, and how we die shapes what comes next. To understand the profound significance of the Bardo, we must venture back to the spiritual landscape of 8th century Tibet, a time when the mountainous realm stood on the precipice of extraordinary transformation. The land of snows, as Tibet was known, was about to witness one of the most remarkable spiritual revolutions in Asian history, centered around the extraordinary figure of Padmasambhava, revered as Guru Rinpoche, the precious teacher. The Tibet of this era was a land where the raw forces of nature held sway, where ancient beliefs and shamanic practices had deep roots in the collective consciousness of its people. The indigenous Bon religion had, for centuries, provided Tibetans with a sophisticated understanding of the spirit world, offering rituals and practices to navigate the mysterious realms between life and death. Into this rich spiritual landscape stepped Padmasambhava, invited by King Trisong Detsen to establish Buddhism in Tibet. But Padmasambhava was no ordinary Buddhist master. The legends that surround him speak of powers that transcended ordinary human limitations. It is said he could tame demons with a mere glance, command the elements with a gesture, and most significantly for our exploration, peer beyond the veil of death itself with perfect clarity. What made Padmasambhava truly remarkable, however, wasn't just his supernatural abilities, but his profound wisdom in understanding how to introduce Buddhist teachings to Tibet. Unlike many religious reformers who sought to eliminate existing beliefs, Padmasambhava recognized the deep wisdom inherent in the Bon tradition. He saw that the Bon understanding of spirits, demons, and the afterlife contained valuable insights that could serve as a bridge to the deeper philosophical teachings of Buddhism. Through a masterful process of spiritual alchemy, Padmasambhava began weaving together Buddhist wisdom with indigenous Bon insights. This synthesis wasn't mere religious diplomacy, it was a sophisticated fusion that preserved the psychological and spiritual insights of both traditions while creating something entirely new. The Bardo emerged from this unique crucible of spiritual integration. Understanding the profound nature of these teachings, Padmasambhava chose not to make them immediately available. Instead, he concealed them as terma, or hidden treasures, prophesying that they would be discovered by future spiritual adepts known as tertons when the time was right. This act of foresight ensured that these vital teachings would survive the various political and religious upheavals that would later sweep through Tibet. The resulting text of the Bardo represents more than just a manual for navigating death. It embodies the culmination of multiple spiritual traditions' understanding of consciousness, reality, and the nature of existence itself. It combines the Bon tradition's intimate knowledge of the spirit world with Buddhism's profound insights into the nature of mind, creating a comprehensive guide for navigating both life and death. This historical context helps us appreciate why the Bardo is uniquely positioned to speak to both Eastern and Western minds, bridging ancient wisdom with contemporary understanding in ways that remain deeply relevant to our modern exploration of consciousness and death. The word Bardo literally means intermediate state or transition. While we typically associate it with death, the Bardo thought teaches that our entire existence is made up of Bardo's transitions between one state of consciousness and another. Even in life, we experience Bardos constantly, the transition from wakefulness to sleep, from one thought to another, from one breath to the next. Death is simply the most profound of these transitions, where the usual reference points of our existence fall away completely. In the Bardo thought's profound understanding of death, the moment of passing isn't simply a cessation of life, but rather an extraordinary unfolding of consciousness through distinct stages. The text describes this first Bardo, known as the Chikai Bardo, as perhaps the most crucial moment in our spiritual journey, the instant when ordinary reality dissolves and our fundamental nature has the opportunity to reveal itself. As consciousness begins to withdraw from the physical body, the Bardo thought describes a precise sequence of dissolution, where the basic elements that compose our material form begin to merge into one another. This process mirrors the reverse order of how these elements manifested during our formation in the womb. The dissolution begins with the earth element, representing our solid physical form, merging into the water element. In this phase, the body loses its ability to support itself. We can no longer move or maintain our posture. Those attending the dying person might notice their limbs becoming heavy and unresponsive. The person experiences a sensation of sinking or being weighed down as the solidity of form dissolves into liquidity. Next, the water element dissolves into fire. The body's fluids begin to dry up, the mouth and tongue become dry. The eyes can no longer produce tears, and the bodily fluids cease their normal functions. The dying person might experience alternating sensations of heat and cold as this transformation occurs. The fire element then dissolves into air. The body's warmth gradually retreats from the extremities, gathering at the heart center. External observers might notice the skin becoming cold to the touch, starting from the feet and hands and moving inward. The dying person experiences the fading of their body's warmth as a flickering sensation, like a flame about to be extinguished. Finally comes the most subtle dissolution, air dissolving into consciousness itself. The breath becomes increasingly shallow until the final exhalation. But rather than marking an end, this moment opens into something extraordinary, the manifestation of what the Bardo thought calls the clear light of reality. This clear light isn't a physical phenomenon, but rather the fundamental nature of mind itself, unveiled when all ordinary mental processes have ceased. It's described as a luminous awareness, incomparably bright yet not blinding, all-encompassing yet infinitely subtle. This is consciousness in its most essential form, undistracted by thoughts, emotions, or sensory experiences. This moment presents the greatest opportunity for liberation. If we can recognize this clear light as our own true nature, not as something external or other, and merge with it without fear or grasping, instant enlightenment is possible. This is why the Bardo thought emphasizes so strongly the importance of spiritual practice during life. Through meditation and mindfulness, we familiarize ourselves with increasingly subtle states of consciousness, preparing us to recognize and remain stable in the presence of the clear light when it appears. The text compares this moment to a child returning to its mother's lap. It's a recognition of what was always there but had been obscured by our ordinary consciousness. This is why the Tibetan tradition places such emphasis on the moment of death as a supreme opportunity for spiritual realization, and why the practices taught in the Bardo thought are considered so precious for both the living and the dying. If we fail to recognize the clear light, we enter the second Bardo, a kaleidoscopic display of visions. Here, consciousness encounters what appears as deities, both peaceful and wrathful. But the Bardo thought reveals a profound truth: these aren't external beings, but projections of our own mind. The peaceful deities appear first, manifestations of wisdom, compassion, and clarity. They represent our highest potential, the enlightened aspects of our own consciousness. Vairocana represents the wisdom of ultimate reality. Akshabhya embodies mirror-like wisdom. Ratnasambhava shows the wisdom of equality. Amitabha manifests discriminating wisdom. Amagasiti represents all-accomplishing wisdom. But if we react with fear or fail to recognize these peaceful forms, more challenging visions appear: the wrathful deities. These fierce forms might seem terrifying, but they're actually the same wisdom energies in more dynamic form. The text repeatedly reminds us, do not be afraid. These are the natural projections of your own mind. This is why the Bardo is often read to the dying to remind them of this essential truth. If liberation isn't achieved in the previous Bardos, consciousness enters the third Bardo, the process of rebirth. This stage is characterized by increasingly solid visions and a growing urge to find a new form of existence. The Bardo describes how karmic winds begin to blow, pushing consciousness toward one of the 6 realms of existence: gods, demigods, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, or hell beings. These aren't literal places, but states of consciousness determined by our karmic tendencies. This is where the text's practical instructions become crucial. It teaches specific meditation techniques to maintain awareness during this process, to avoid being swept away by karmic winds and habitual patterns. Yet, the profound wisdom of the Bardo extends far beyond its guidance for the dying. It serves as a comprehensive map of consciousness and reality itself. At its core, this sacred text presents a revolutionary understanding. Everything we experience, from our most mundane daily perceptions to the extraordinary visions of the Bardos, emerges from the creative power of our own mind. This teaching isn't suggesting a simple solipsism that nothing exists outside our own mind. Rather, it points to something far more subtle and profound: the inseparable relationship between consciousness and the reality we experience. The Bardo reveals that what we perceive as solid, external reality is actually more akin to a dream or a projection arising from the interplay between our consciousness and the fundamental ground of being. Consider how in dreams we experience entire worlds that feel completely real while we're in them. These dream experiences emerge from our mind yet feel external and solid. The Bardo suggests that our waking reality functions in a similar way, not that it's unreal, but that it's more fluid and mind-created than we typically recognize. The peaceful and wrathful deities that appear in the Bardo serve as the perfect metaphor for this understanding. These beings appear absolutely real and external to the consciousness experiencing them, yet the text repeatedly emphasizes that they are projections of our own mind. The same wisdom applies to our daily experience. Our perceptions of friends and enemies, pleasant and unpleasant situations, success and failure, all arise from the interplay of consciousness with itself. This is where meditation becomes crucial. Through sustained meditation practice, we begin to observe directly how our mind creates our reality. We watch thoughts arise and dissolve, emotions surge and fade, and begin to recognize the space of awareness in which all these experiences occur. This space, often called the nature of mind, is what remains when all our mental projections are recognized for what they are. The text emphasizes several key aspects of meditation practice. First, we learn to stabilize our awareness. Like trying to observe waves while being tossed about by them, an unstable mind cannot clearly perceive its own nature. Through practice, we develop the ability to remain present and aware without being constantly swept away by thoughts and emotions. Second, we cultivate the ability to recognize the projective nature of experience. Just as a skilled moviegoer can enjoy a film while remaining aware of its illusory nature, we learn to engage with life while maintaining awareness of its dreamlike quality. Third, we develop familiarity with increasingly subtle states of consciousness. This prepares us for the dissolution process of death and the experiences of the Bardos, where our usual reference points fall away and we encounter more fundamental levels of mind. Finally, we learn to rest in the nature of mind itself, the clear, luminous awareness that underlies all experience. This is the same awareness that manifests as the clear light in the moment of death, but we don't have to wait until then to recognize it. These practices aren't just preparation for death, they transform our experience of life itself. As we become more familiar with the projective nature of reality, we naturally hold our experiences more lightly. We become less rigid in our concepts, more flexible in our responses, and more compassionate in our interactions with others, recognizing that they too are caught in their own mental projections. The Bardo thus reveals itself as much more than a guide for the dying. It's a manual for living consciously, a map of the mind's deepest nature, and a practical guide to recognizing the true nature of reality in every moment, whether in life or in death. The profound wisdom contained within the Bardo thought transcends its traditional role as a guide for the dying, offering transformative insights for daily living. When we truly understand the nature of Bardo as these intermediate states of transition, we begin to recognize them not just in the grand passage of death, but in the fabric of our everyday experience. Consider how our lives are composed of countless transitions: the moment between wakefulness and sleep, the space between thoughts, the pause between breaths. Even larger life changes, career shifts, relationship endings, moves to new cities can be understood as Bardos. Each of these transitions contains the same essential quality as the great Bardo of death: a dissolution of the familiar and an opening into new possibility. These daily Bardos offer us precious opportunities for practice. When we lose a job, for instance, we experience a mini-death, the dissolution of our professional identity, routine, and security. In this space of uncertainty, we can either react with fear and desperate grasping, or we can practice remaining present with the groundlessness, just as we'll need to do in the death Bardo. Each breakup, each farewell, each moment of loss becomes a teaching ground for the ultimate letting go. The Bardo thought's wisdom becomes particularly relevant in how we handle uncertainty. Modern life is filled with unpredictability, yet we often exhaust ourselves trying to maintain an illusion of control. The text teaches us that transition and uncertainty aren't obstacles to be overcome, but opportunities for awakening. When we learn to rest in the space between the known and unknown, we develop a resilience that will serve us in all of life's transitions, including the final one. Perhaps most importantly, understanding the universal nature of these transitions awakens our compassion. When we recognize that every being experiences these moments of vulnerability and uncertainty, our hearts naturally open. We see how others, like ourselves, struggle with change and loss. This understanding transforms how we relate to others in their difficult moments, whether they're going through a divorce, facing illness, or approaching death. This compassionate awareness becomes especially crucial when supporting those who are dying. Having recognized and worked with our own mini Bardos, we can be more present and understanding with others facing the great Bardo. We learn to sit with uncertainty, to offer presence without trying to fix or change the situation, to be a steady witness to another's transition. The practical application of the Bardo thought's teachings thus becomes a daily practice of awareness and letting go. We can use every transition, from the microscopic gaps between thoughts to the macroscopic changes in our lives, as opportunities to recognize the nature of mind and release our attachments. In doing so, we prepare not just for our eventual death, but for a more awakened and compassionate life. This is the profound gift of the Bardo thought. It teaches us that by facing and understanding transition and change, we can transform our fear into wisdom, our resistance into acceptance, and our confusion into clarity. Every Bardo becomes a doorway to deeper awakening, making the whole of life a preparation for conscious dying, and conscious dying a gateway to liberation. The intersection of modern scientific inquiry and the ancient wisdom of the Bardo thought reveals fascinating parallels that bridge centuries of human understanding. As researchers delve deeper into the nature of consciousness and the mysteries of death, they're discovering phenomena that remarkably align with what Tibetan mystics described over a millennium ago. Near-death experiences, NDEs, have become a particular focus of scientific research, with thousands of documented cases showing striking similarities to the Bardo states described in the Tibetan text. Researchers have found consistent patterns in these experiences: encounters with profound light, sensations of leaving the physical body, movement through different experiential realms, and life reviews. These modern accounts often mirror with surprising precision the stages of consciousness transformation detailed in the Bardo thought. The field of quantum physics has perhaps provided the most intriguing scientific parallels to the Bardo thought's teachings. The quantum world reveals a reality that defies our conventional understanding, where consciousness and observation appear to play a fundamental role in shaping physical reality. The famous observer effect in quantum mechanics suggests that the act of observation affects the behavior of particles, implying a deep interconnection between mind and matter that the Bardo thought has long proclaimed. Neuroscience, too, is offering new perspectives on consciousness that align with traditional Buddhist understanding. Research into meditation and altered states of consciousness shows how the brain can experience reality in radically different ways, supporting the Bardo thought's assertion that our perception of reality is more fluid and mind-dependent than we typically assume. Recent studies in consciousness research have even begun exploring the moments around death, documenting surprising levels of brain activity after clinical death has been declared. These findings suggest that consciousness might indeed go through distinct phases during the dying process, as the Bardo thought describes. While scientific and contemplative approaches use different methodologies and languages, one speaking of quantum fields and neural networks, the other of Bardo's and clear light, they're both attempting to map the same territory: the fundamental nature of consciousness and its relationship to reality. The growing convergence between these two approaches suggests that the ancient wisdom of the Bardo thought might have captured profound truths about consciousness that science is only now beginning to understand and verify through empirical means. Perhaps the most profound teaching of the Bardo thought is that every moment contains the possibility of liberation. Whether in life or death, whenever we can recognize the true nature of our mind and let go of our attachments, freedom is possible. The text reminds us that death isn't something that happens only at the end of life. Every moment, something in us is dying and something new is being born. Understanding this can help us live more fully and face death with greater peace and awareness. As we conclude our journey through the Bardo thought, we're left with profound questions. How will we use this precious human life? Are we ready for the great transition that awaits us all? Can we learn to face both life and death with awareness and courage? The answers to these questions lie not in intellectual understanding alone, but in how we choose to live each moment. The Bardo thought offers us not just a map of the afterlife, but a guide to living more consciously and dying more peacefully. Remember, every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of awareness is precious. Each transition in life is an opportunity to practice for the great transition of death. In understanding death, we learn to truly live. If this exploration of life, death, and consciousness has resonated with you, please share this video with others who might benefit from these teachings. Subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into ancient wisdom and its modern applications. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. What aspects of the Bardo thought speak most deeply to you? How do you relate to these teachings about death and transformation? Share your reflections in the comments below. Together, we can work to transform our relationship with death, and in doing so, learn to live more fully and consciously. Thank you for joining me on this profound journey through the Bardo thought.